Africa has an amazingly rich and complex history, and there have been hundreds of important kings, queens, sultans, chiefs, and emperors throughout the millennia. Unfortunately, not all of them are as well known to us as they should be. From great warrior kings to important political reformers, there are so many great stories and things to learn from them. Largely overshadowed by our modern-day presidents and prime ministers and heads of states, in no particular order, here are 13 of the most powerful kings in ancient Africa. Sunni Ali, also known as Sunni Ali Bear, was the first king of the Songhai Empire and the 15th ruler of the Sunni dynasty. Under Sunni Ali's infantry and cavalry, many cities were captured and then fortified, such as Timbuktu in 1468 and Jenne in 1475. He conducted a repressive policy against the scholars of Timbuktu, especially those of the Sankore region who were associated with the Tuareg whom Ali expelled to gain control of the town. During his reign, Songhai surpassed the height of the Mali Empire, engulfing areas under the Mali Empire and the Ghana Empire before it. Sunni Ali ruled over both urban Muslims and rural non-Muslims at a time when the traditional coexistence of different beliefs was being challenged. His adherence to African animism, while also professing Islam, leads some writers to describe him as an outwardly or nominally Muslim. There are two versions of Ali's death. According to the Tariq al-Sudan, Ali drowned while crossing the Niger River in late 1492. However, oral sources say he was killed by his sister's son, Askia Muhammad. Ali was succeeded by his son Sunni Baru, who was challenged by Askia because Baru was not seen as a faithful Muslim, and Askia successfully succeeded to the throne. Askia Muhammad I, who was born Muhammad Toure in Futa Toro, was an emperor, military commander, and political reformer of the Songhai Empire in the late 15th century. Askia the Great was from the Soninke ethnic group. At its peak under his reign, the Songhai Empire encompassed the Hausa state as far as Kano in present-day northern Nigeria and much of the territory that had belonged to the Songhai Empire in the west. His policies resulted in a rapid expansion of trade with Europe and Asia, the creation of many schools, and the establishment of Islam as an integral part of the empire. Askia subsequently orchestrated a program of expansion and consolidation, which extended the empire from Tagaza in the north to the borders of Yatenga in the south, and from Air in the northeast to Futa Jalon in Guinea. Instead of organizing the empire along Islamic lines, he tempered and improved on the traditional model by instituting a system of bureaucratic government unparalleled in Western Africa. In addition, Askia established standardized trade measures and regulations, initiated the policing of trade routes, and also established an organized tax system. He was overthrown by his son Askia Musa in 1528. He died 10 years after in 1538 and was buried in Gao, present-day Mali, under a pyramid of earth scaled by wooden spikes. His tomb is still standing and has become one of the most respected mosques in all of West Africa. Shaka Zulu was born into the small South African clan of the Zulus in 1787. His father was the chief of the Zulus, and his mother, Nandi, was the daughter of the chief of a nearby clan. When Shaka was still a young boy, his father drove him and his mother out of the village and soon became part of the clan of a powerful chief named Njoya, where Shaka trained as a warrior. When Njoya died, Shaka took control of the surrounding tribes and became the most powerful leader in the area. He continued to train and build his army, conquering many of the surrounding chiefdoms. At one point, Shaka had a well-trained army of around 40,000 soldiers. He was a strong but brutal leader. Anyone who disobeyed an order was immediately killed. He sometimes massacred a whole village in order to send a message. When Nandi, Shaka's mother, died, he was heartbroken. He forced the entire kingdom to mourn her. He issued an order that no new crops were to be planted for a year. He also demanded that no milk be used for a year and that all pregnant women would be killed. He had around 7,000 people executed for not mourning enough for his mother. The people had had enough of Shaka's cruelty and were ready to revolt. In 1828, Shaka was assassinated and buried in an unmarked grave. Undoubtedly the greatest monarch of the Central African state of the Kanem-Bornu dynasty, Idris Alooma was May or king of the Kanem-Bornu Empire, which was located mainly in present-day Chad and Nigeria. An outstanding statesman, Kanem-Bornu reached the zenith of his power under his rule. Alooma is remembered for his military skills, administrative reform, and Islamic piety. His major adversaries were the Hausa to the west, the Tuareg and Tubo to the north, and the Bulala to the east. Kanem-Bornu under Alooma was powerful and wealthy. Government revenue came from tributes, taxes, and trade. After the fall of Songhai in 1591, Idris Alooma became the undisputed champion of the Muslims of the city. The empire then became the Bornu Caliphate and the leading Islamic power in Africa. The capital city was called Ngazagamu, and it was one of the largest cities on earth. In 1658, Ngazagamu housed about 250,000 people. There were 660 avenues, many of them were broad and unbending, indicative of town planning. The architecture of the high streets lined on both sides with trees offering shade. Such buildings had to be built on an unprecedented scale, and the workmanship was of the same quality as seen in Europe at the time. Alooma ruled from 1564 to 1596 according to the Diwan. He died in the Bagrame campaign where he was mortally wounded. Later, he was buried in the lake Alo, south of the Maiduguri, present-day northern Nigeria. Born in 1844 in Abome, Behanzin was the 11th king of Dahomey from 1889 to 1894. Dahomey was one of the most powerful kingdoms of West Africa, deriving its power from trade and its superior army. At the time, Behanzin masterfully led an army of 15,000 men and 5,000 Amazon women. In February 1890, the French occupied Cotonou. Behanzin, now king after his father's sudden death, prepared for war. His forces attacked the French simultaneously on two fronts, militarily at Cotonou and economically, by destroying the palm plantations at Porto Novo. However, France was determined to annex Dahomey before the British or Germans did. Behanzin, knowing that he would have to defend his sovereignty, continued upgrading his army in preparation for renewed war. He declared a treaty made by his father in 1868 null and void. From this, war began. In 1894, Behanzin was defeated by Colonel Alfred Amedi Dodds, a Senegalese mulatto who was sent to fight against him with powerful French armed forces. Behanzin, not wanting his people to be massacred, surrendered his person to Dodds without signing any instruments of national surrender or treaty. Dahomey was then placed under France's protection and it became a French colony. In 1906, Behanzin died while on exile in Algeria. Menelik II was the emperor of Ethiopia from 1889 to his death in 1913. At the height of his internal power and external prestige, the process of territorial expansion and creation of the modern empire state was completed by 1898. Menelik is also remembered for leading Ethiopian troops against the Kingdom of Italy in the First Italo-Ethiopian War, where Menelik scored a decisive victory at the Battle of Adwa. Ethiopia was transformed under Emperor Menelik. The major signposts of modernization with the help of key ministerial advisors were put in place. Externally, Menelik's victory over the Italian invaders earned him a great fame. Following the Battle of Adwa, recognition of Ethiopia's independence by external powers was expressed in terms of diplomatic representation at his court and delineation of Ethiopia's boundaries with the adjacent colonies. Menelik expanded his kingdom to the south and east into Kaffa, Sidama, Wolieta, and other kingdoms. Later in his reign, Menelik established the first cabinet of ministers to help in the administration of the empire, appointing trusted and widely respected nobles and retainers to the first ministries. These ministers would remain in place long after his death, serving in their post through the brief reign of Liege Iyasu and into the reign of Empress Soditu. In the 17th year of his reign, that is 1324, Mansa Musa I of Mali set out on his famous pilgrimage to Mecca. It was this pilgrimage that awakened the world to the stupendous wealth of Mali. Cairo and Mecca received this royal personage, traveling from his capital of Niani on the upper Niger River to Walata, present-day Mauritania, and on to Tuat, now in Algeria, before making his way to Cairo. Mansa Musa was accompanied by an impressive caravan consisting of 60,000 men, including a personal retinue of 12,000 slaves, all clad in brocade and Persian silk. The emperor himself rode on horseback and was directly preceded by 500 slaves, each carrying a gold-adorned staff. In addition, Mansa Musa had a baggage train of 80 camels, each carrying 300 pounds of gold. The historian Alooma, who visited Cairo 12 years after the emperor's visit, found the inhabitants of this city, with a population estimated at 1 million, still singing the praises of Mansa Musa. So lavish was the emperor in his spending that he flooded the Cairo market with gold, thereby causing such a decline in its value that the market some 12 years later had still not fully recovered. Under Mansa Musa, Timbuktu grew to be a very important commercial city, having caravan connections with Egypt and with all other important trade centers in North Africa. Mansa Musa not only expanded Mali's borders from the Atlantic to Nigeria, but also built a vast trade network from gold and salt and undertook various building projects, truly making Timbuktu the center of West Africa, if not the world at the time. Tsunka was the Ghana, that is ruler of the Ouagadougou, from 1037 to 1075. He was described in contemporary accounts as a lover of justice, and he settled many disputes within his empire personally. He became known for his involvement in communities and for the fact he greatly boosted the economy of the empire. He was able to further cultivate his public image through projecting an air of magic and mysticism. During his reign, Manning controlled numerous warriors that were tasked with defending the kingdom. Later on in his reign, the kingdom would eventually fall because of a few factors. One factor was the system of governance and the division between Muslims and non-Muslims. Manning himself was not a Muslim. He had succeeded Basi in 1062 and, like him, had refused to convert to Islam, with the missionary Almoravids, who wanted to convert other people to their faith, started invading the empire under Abu Bakr ibn Umar. However, in 1076, the Almoravids succeeded in sacking the empire's capital of Kumbe, Saleh. Manning continued to rule as a vassal of the Almoravids and paid tribute to them. The Almoravids were expelled in 1087, with Abu Bakr being killed. The empire had, however, been severely weakened, and the territories formerly ruled by it had become independent. Islam, which had become the dominant faith of its upper class, was being imposed on all subjects, and many animists who migrated to other areas, away from the empire. Sultan Ibrahim Njoya ruled over Bamum and its inhabitants in western Cameroon in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. His dynasty went back centuries, but his rule was delayed, first because of his age, and second because he had to recover the head of his father from an adversarial clan, which was of great cultural significance to the Bamum. He created the first written scripts for the Bamum language and established schools. In 1902, German colonizers arrived in the Bamum Kingdom. The entire region had been claimed by Germany in the European partition of Africa in 1884. Resistance by neighboring peoples had proven futile, so Sultan Njoya opted for a tactical surrender, warmly welcoming the German occupiers. This strategy allowed the Sultan to maintain a high degree of autonomy in his administration of the state. He ceded military authority to the Germans, but was able to continue his ambitious cultural projects without interruption, while also seeking to modernize and reform his kingdom. The Sultan also welcomed Protestant Christian missionaries from the Basel mission, who established a base in Fumban in 1906. Njoya encouraged his nobles to enter their children in Christian schools while still maintaining his own Bamum schools. Muhammad Ahmad ibn as-Sa'id Abd Allah was a Muslim religious leader and a Sufi teacher in the Anglo-Egyptian Sudan. He declared a jihad and raised an army after declaring himself the Mahdi, a messianic figure in Islamic thought, in 1881, and led a successful war of liberation from the Ottoman Egyptian military occupation. He also achieved a remarkable victory over the British, who were the de facto rulers of Egypt. Briefly, he led an independent Islamic state but soon died of typhus after the 1885 liberation of Khartoum, where he defeated the British general Charles George Gordon, who was killed in the battle. This made the British reprisal inevitable, and the state Ahmad founded fell to the British in 1899. Ahmad was an inspirational figure for many Muslims who also wanted to assert their right to self-determination against imperial and colonial powers. The experiment at Islamic governance was both short-lived and a failure. Ahmad tried to discourage feelings of tribal superiority to replace tribalism with a common Muslim identity that crossed tribal barriers. Ahmad's legacy lives on in Sudan's political and religious history, and his tomb can still be visited. Former Prime Minister Sadiq Al-Mahdi and Sudanese-British actor Alexander Sadiq are both his descendants. Ewuare I was the king of the Benin Kingdom for the latter half of the 15th century. His rise to power was a violent and bloody one and the result of a vicious coup against his own brother, which destroyed much of the capital of Benin. Despite the violent start to his reign, Ewuare earned his title of the Great by rebuilding much of Benin City, reforming political structures, becoming a patron of the arts, and expanding the territory of the kingdom. He increased and expanded trade with other nations, which helped him to foster the arts, and it is due to him that ivory and wood carving became more popular. Ewuare was an indisputably real historical figure, but he was such a powerful man that many believed he held magical powers, which is attested to in much of the artwork of the era. Alaafin Abiodun was an 18th century king of the Oyo people in present-day Nigeria, coming to the throne shortly after the Oyo conquest of neighboring Dahomey. Abiodun soon found himself embroiled in a civil war over the goals of the newly wealthy states. Basharun Gaa, the empire's prime minister and Lord Marshal, had used his power to pervert the constitutional terms of abdication in a bid to limit the powers of the Alaafin and gain more political power for himself. During Gaa's power play, he had succeeded in deposing 4 previous kings. In terms of trade, while Abiodun favored economic expansion for the sake of the Oyo Empire, his opponents favored using the wealth from Dahomey's tributes to finance further military expansion. Abiodun soon proved victorious and pursued a policy of peaceful trade with the European merchants of the coast. This course significantly weakened the army, leaving his successor Awole to face a number of local rebellions. Abiodun's reign is generally remembered as a time of peace and prosperity for the Oyo Empire. His descendant Alaafin Atiba was the founder of the ruling dynasty in the present Oyo. His grandson, Candido da Fonseca Galvão, under the title of Dom Oba II, was an important South American abolitionist during Pedro II of Brazil's rule. His other descendants include the 19th century Ibadan warrior Oluyole, the historian Reverend Samuel Johnson, the first African bishop of the Anglican Church, Samuel Ajayi Crowther, as well as Abat Olayinka Macaulay, the founder of Nigeria's first political party. In 1809, Usman Dan Fodio founded the Sokoto Caliphate. Dan Fodio, a religious author, writer, and Islamic activist, was one of the urbanized ethnic Fulani communities living in the Hausa state in what is now northern Nigeria. An instructor at the Maliki School of Law and the Kadiriya Order of Sufism, he remained in the city-state of Gober until 1802 when, inspired by his reformist ideas and growing persecution by local authorities, he led his followers into exile. Dan Fodio wrote more than 100 books on religion, administration, culture, and community. He blamed the current African Muslim rulers for what he saw as corruption paganism, or breach of the principles of Sharia law and heavy taxation. He promoted literacy and education, particularly for women, and many of his daughters became scholars and authors. His works and sayings are still very much quoted today. Usman Dan Fodio retired after 1811 and continued to write about the moral actions of the Muslim faith. Upon his death in 1817, Muhammad Bello, his son, succeeded him as Sultan and became the ruler of the Sokoto Caliphate, which at the time was the largest state south of the Sahara. Are there other African kings whose stories you would like to tell us? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, don't hesitate to like and share it with your friends. Would you like to know more about other powerful African queens? Check that out in the next video. You can also subscribe to our channel to receive the latest videos as they drop.